Here's a question I ask myself before I build any unit, lesson, a concert program, or a show. What's the one big idea I want my students to explore and walk away understanding more deeply about themselves, about others, and about the world? In this video, I'm going to walk you through a real unit from my own arts classroom built entirely around one big idea: community. I'll show you where the idea came from, the real world connection for my students, and the exact framework I use to turn that one big idea into a full unit of connected learning, where we use the artistic process, not just to learn arts concepts and skills, but to learn in and through the arts. If you ever wondered what culturally relevant and responsive teaching in the arts actually looks like in practice, not just in theory, this will be a really good example of that. Before we get into it though, quick introduction. I'm Ashley Cuthbertson. I use the pronouns she and her, and I help arts educators and leaders confidently navigate diverse student backgrounds, needs, and abilities to create engaging arts learning experiences so that all learners develop the skills they need for success, both inside and outside the arts classroom. So let's get into it. One of the things I wanted my students to experience in my own arts classroom was community. Beyond the intentional physical choices I made in my classroom setup and partnering with students to design our routines and our expectations together to really inspire that feeling of community, I also brought that same intentionality and that same lens to what we were actually learning in the curriculum. So early in the school year, I designed a unit around exploring the big idea of community. Through that unit, I wanted students to understand how people engage in community, why people engage in community, and importantly, how the different knowledge and strengths they each hold individually, that diversity of knowledge, is actually a positive thing. And that's what makes our community stronger. So that's where the unit started. Not a fancy curriculum purchase, not a bunch of new materials, just being really intentional about what kind of experience I wanted my students to have and what's one big idea connected to that kind of learning experience, and then deciding how I was going to build it out. So what does that actually look like? Well, after I had that big idea, I needed to think about what's the real world connection my students would have to it. At the time, I was teaching elementary music, so I thought about what my young learners would naturally already understand about community. And I instantly thought of one way young kids learn and build community, and that's through games. So that big idea of community connected to something I knew my students already had real world experience with, that became the bridge or the vehicle for the learning we were going to engage in. The unit centered around one essential question, and that was, how and why do people engage in their community? And so I used actually traditional singing games rooted in Gullah culture and the work of Bessie Jones to help students explore what it means to contribute your unique strengths to a group, and so that they could experience firsthand how creating music together builds that sense of belonging. The takeaway here is that you don't need anything fancy or complicated for that real world connection, but you do need to understand your learners, their unique backgrounds, identities, strengths, and interests. Understanding that is how you find that real world connection for them, because that connection becomes the bridge to everything that comes after it. So how did I take that big idea and turn it into a full unit of learning? And this is the part where you can actually reuse the same framework for any big idea, not just this one. So in an arts classroom, we're thinking about the artistic process, and it breaks down into 4 strands: connect, respond, perform, and create. And in my arts as a vehicle approach, the connect strand actually has 3 kind of like subparts to it: connecting to self, connecting to others, and connecting to the world. So you can think of it like, how are students going to connect to themselves, to others in the world? How will they respond to the expressive qualities and elements of the art form? How will they use artistic concepts and skills to perform or produce? And how will they create using those artistic concepts and skills to produce new interpretations or pieces of art? Let me actually walk you through what that looks like for this unit. And by the way, if you'd like a copy of the overview of this unit, you can download it for free. I put a link to that download in the description below. For connecting to self, students considered what kind of games they like to play and what roles in those games they gravitate towards. For connecting to others, that's where the singing games came in. So students played the singing games in community with each other. They learned about Bessie Jones, who's a well-known singer and performer in Gullah culture, if you don't already know about her. They learned about Gullah culture. They also learned about the Sea Islands. For connecting to the world, students explored air property laws and how those laws contributed to a loss of Black wealth and those communities in the Sea Islands over time. This part really matters. A culturally relevant approach means students are also exploring socio-political topics through the arts. And this helps them to not only develop understanding about the world, but it also helps them to explore issues of power dynamics, equity, inequity, and further gives them a real reason for why they're engaging in this learning in the first place. For responding, students identified vocal timbre, both adult and child. They orally identified melodic patterns, and they recognized melody as an element of music. For performing, students demonstrated music literacy skills. They practiced part work using call and response form, and sang individually and as a member of an ensemble. And then for create, students applied a creative process for music. They improvised melodic patterns, and they specifically collaborated to arrange a new version of a known folk song. So the summative assessment or summative task for this unit was we have learned lots of different folk songs, singing games. Students picked one, and as a group, we rearranged it for that particular group of kids. The takeaway here is that as you consider how you might apply this framework to a big idea of your own, think about how each of those four strands, connect, respond, perform, and produce, and create, can work together to make a really robust learning experience, one that goes way beyond just learning artistic techniques, facts and skills, but actually helps students learn more about themselves, about others, and the world. We just get to do that with Arts as the Vehicle. So that's just the overview of this unit, but this is the kind of outcome that comes from shifting from thinking purely about facts, skills, and techniques to thinking, how can we use the arts as a vehicle in a really robust way and explore ideas that are worth exploring with our learners? Ideas that don't just matter inside the four walls of our arts classrooms, but matter outside of them too. If you'd like to see the full lesson by lesson sequence of this unit, how I sequenced from the introductory lesson all the way to the summative lesson where they were arranging the folk song, plus guidance on how to build a unit like this for your own arts classroom, I lay all of that out in my book, Music as a Vehicle. So if you want to go deeper, grab your copy. The link's below in the description. And if you want more real examples and frameworks like this one every week, join my newsletter community, the weekly notes newsletter. That's where I go deep each week to share the thinking, tools, and real arts classroom examples behind culturally responsive arts education for arts teachers, school and district leaders, and the college professors preparing the next generation of arts educators. So be sure to join. The link for that is below as well. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And I'd really love to know, is there a particular art standard, an artist, or a work in visual art, music, dance, or theater that you'd love to see me break down like this in a future video? So drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know if there's anything in particular you'd like me to explore next. Okay, bye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.